Welcome to Expedition Networking, a special segment of the Networking RX podcast. I'm Frank Agan, founder and president of AmSpirit Business Connections, and your host for this program. For those of you who are familiar, on the Networking RX podcast, we share information and have conversations with experts, such as authors, researchers, and social scientists. And all of these programs are aimed at helping you learn how to become better at building professional relationships and understanding why they work. In this Expedition Networking segment, however, we're going to bring on successful entrepreneurs and unique professionals and explore their networking adventure and learn how they used relationships to create lasting success. You know, hopefully we've all seen the movie Forrest Gump, the saying in Forrest Gump, life's like a box of chocolates. You just have to bite in. You never know what you're going to get, or something along those lines. I say that because Sajjad Hussein introduced me to an individual, Ruben, who got me on his software, and his software is called Mimirin, which is kind of a CRM. It's kind of a unique sort of a CRM. But the CRM, what it actually lets you do is it lets you, because it's really for solopreneurs. I mean, if you work in a company, then you've got 6 other people on staff that you're competing against and kind of have that social facilitation. But when you're a solopreneur, you don't have that. So what this CRM does, again, it's called Mimirin, Mimiram. Look it up. What it allows you to do as a solopreneur, which more or less I am as far as trying to grow AmSpirit Business Connections, allows you to kind of find other people who are using the system, and you can kind of compete with one another and cheer each other on and things like that. So I told Ruben, I said, Ruben, can you hook me up with somebody? And he did. And I just figured he would just hook me up with somebody, and that would be the end of it. And that wasn't the end of it. He connected me with Michael Fritz Hughes, and goes by Fritz. And so it's like, we got to meet each other. And so we got on a call, and like anything, sometimes you get on calls and they can't get over quick enough. And then sometimes you get on calls and it's like, oh my God, we're running out of time. We have to redo this. And this is going in a million directions. Fritz is laughing. But anyhow, Fritz is the founder of Podcastify Me, and he's a co-founder of Exactly Zero with his wife Charlotte. We'll talk about those towards the end. But he's a networker. He's a relationship guy. He's a solopreneur. He's you got to be out there. And so as we were talking, we're kind of ticking away at all the different things that we had in common and things to talk about. I said, I got to get you on the podcast to kind of kick around some of these conversations related to podcasting and building relationships and business networking. So welcome, Fritz.
Thanks for having me, man. It's good to be on this side of the mic again.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess give everybody the nickel tour.
Sure. So I never thought I'd be a business owner, and then something happened, and now I can't stop. So
Okay.
I got my start in entrepreneurship back in 2015, and I started a company. It was a tech company called Arch DevOps. That company actually, I shut that down earlier this year. And they say, you're not a real entrepreneur until you've shut a company down. So I guess now I've made the cut. But just the stuff that I've learned over those span of years has taught me a lot about podcasting and social media and marketing and networking. And then with the other company, Exactly Zero, marketing and social media there, but also just that real deep interrelational storytelling. People love the story. And the more that I run business, the more I find just deeper tactics and skills and powers in myself. And I'm like, man, wonder what else is in there. So, I'm just going to keep starting businesses. It's too much fun. I can't quit, man.
Yeah. No, I hear you. You are what I term unemployable. Not unemployed,
Yes.
just unemployable. Nobody in the right mind would employ you because whatever they had, you would break it to put it back together in a better way.
I would. Yeah. I used to get paid to break stuff. So my career before being an entrepreneur, I was a software tester. So people would be like, explain like I'm 5. Like, what do you do? And I'm like, I write computer words that break other people's computer words.
Right.
I break software, I break computers. And they're like, and they pay you to do that? I'm like, yeah. So yeah, always breaking stuff.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this. When did you discover this networking thing, this relationship thing? I mean, I know you're married. You just, from a personal end, it's totally different. But on a business front, I mean, you got a job. They paid you well. You needed to be playing nice with others. Those are all the, you know. But from an entrepreneurial perspective, when did that really hit home for you?
Probably 2018. I
Okay,
would say 2018. So that
give
was
us
the
some
year.
give us some backstory on this.
Yeah, well, so that was the year. So at the end of 2017, my contract at a company expired. And I mean, it was one of those like, it's nothing personal. We have to cut the department and you're in there. So sorry. They gave me like a month's notice. But in that time, so starting in January of that year, I'm like, well, I got all this free time now. What am I going to do?
Hmm.
And I decided, and this is back when LinkedIn Local was a big thing. I started a LinkedIn Local chapter here in St. Louis, and I had made some racket on LinkedIn about it, saying, "Hey, we're going to do something here in St. Louis." And some guy who I had never met in my life, his name's Doug Lewis. He's like, I think I want to be part of this because I'm a good photographer. I can do some camera work. And he said, "This sounds like fun." He's like, "I'm kind of in a good spot in my career right now. I want to do this." And I'm like, all right, let's do it. I mean, I had never done anything like this before. So I had a photographer, videographer. I had been reaching out to different people, asking them if they wanted to come. And just over the like 4 or 5 months that it was just getting going, right? I would run into people, and here in St. Louis, everybody knows everybody, right?
Right.
I would run into people. There was a guy I met, his name was Stephen Mathis. And when we found out like where he was working was where I was working. Like he was there the whole time, and we just didn't know each other because he was an actuary and I was on the software team. And I'm like, "You work there?" He goes, "Yeah, you do too." And I'm like, "Yeah, probably in the other building." He's like, "Probably," and we're good friends. Um, but just that ability to say, "All right, here's something common across all of us. We're going to get together at 5 p.m. on such and such Tuesday night, and we're going to meet at this place." And just see who comes and make those connections. And I realized that networking is something that, yeah, it takes effort, but if you're open to being willing to talk with whoever, you'll find that everybody has got a super deep story and they probably got more connections to you than you realize. But you have to, you know, be open to it. You know what I mean?
Hmm. Yeah. I'll let you share your thoughts on this, but what I found when I became what I'll call self-employed, and I mean, I've got a business now, and I have people who work for me and franchisees. So I'm not really a solopreneur. I'm just kind of the one person really responsible for expanding things.
Right.
But what I discovered, it was very liberating because when I worked for somebody and I had a good career and I left on good terms. I could have gotten my job back at some point, not anymore. It's been 25 years, 27 years. But I found it to be very liberating because all of a sudden I was in control. When I worked for somebody, I always felt like, okay, the shoe could drop at any point for whatever reason. Hey, we lost this big client, and we know you're not on that big client, but the people who are, we're going to move them over to your client, and you're going to be out. I mean, there were just so many things I could not control. Whereas when I became self-employed, you lose things, you certainly do, but I had that control, that ability to go out and meet people, and like you did, you start a LinkedIn Local and just see where it goes. It's it's exciting,
It
I thought.
is. Well, it is. And I mean, it's not just you, right? At least two
Yeah,
of us think it's exciting for that
yeah.
reason because you're basically crafting something out of nothing. It's almost like a godlike power to be able to say, we're going to manifest this thing. It wasn't there before. And you just kind of use a little bit of technology and a little bit of social glad handing, and you've got a networking group. And it's like, well, that was almost too easy. Wonder what else I can make, right?
Yeah.
It's it's an addictive power. It's like, wow, you can make things awesome.
Yeah. Well, I think it opens your mind to all the possibilities that are out there. Because when you're working for somebody, well, you know this firsthand. I mean, you had people in your company you didn't even know they existed. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you knew there was a department, but you didn't know who the person was. It was a faceless bot over there that was doing actuarial work.
Yeah.
You probably made jokes about him. um, but you know, when you're out and you're networking with other people, it's like you start to learn that, okay, yeah, there is somebody who actually podcasts for a living. There's somebody who does this for a living. They've just kind of reinvented themselves. You know, people who hold masterminds and have created businesses out of these things. Not that I'm interested in those businesses necessarily, but it just kind of opens the world of possibilities to what it is you can do. Whereas when I was this tax consultant, there was just a scary time there. It was like, okay, well, what else is there for me? There's nothing else I can do, which um, is the furthest thing from the truth. And people tried to tell me that, but it's like I just can't see it. You know, I'm looking through the straw, and all I can see looking through the straw is the tax code and
Mm-hmm.
you know what's involved with that.
Yeah. It does tend to limit your mindset. And I have nothing against people who want to work at corporations. There is an element of stability. There is an element of predictability for the most part. I mean, like you said before, it's like, yeah, you could technically lose your job at any time,
Yeah,
but there is that strength and that predictability. It's a predictable salary, but I've been on both sides. I can't, that's not for me
yeah,
anymore. There's something different. And it's like, I wouldn't be testing myself to my limits. I know I wouldn't be if I was back working in an employed state. So, I'm always getting stronger all the time out here in the wild where I
yeah,
got to hunt.
yeah.
Yep.
Sunday nights, love them or hate them.
Love them.
Yeah,
Absolutely love them.
yeah,
And there was a time when I was like, oh my goodness, the work, but if I feel that way, it means I need to make a change in my process. And now
yeah,
it's not like terribly huge change. Maybe it means, okay, I overcommitted. So either I can bite down on the stick and get it done, or I can figure out what to delegate or what to drop on the floor. Do I have to do everything? Probably
yeah,
not. I think I do because American busyness.
yeah.
But yeah, I love Sunday nights.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I figured that would be the answer. And you're probably like me. You try to sit around, you get fidgety. And it's not American busyness. It's more, oh, I got an idea, right? I got an
Yeah.
idea. Somebody said something on TV or whatever. I got an idea. I got an idea. Um, and I'm, got to jot notes or whatever. Paper notes everywhere. Paper in the car, pens in the car. What do I got? You
Yeah.
know, note to self, dictate something.
Yeah, I,
uh,
I do that and speech to text gets me in trouble. I'm like, that's not what I said. Those aren't
yeah,
the words I used. Stupid phone. You know, you're gonna get
yeah,
me fired from my
yeah.
own job.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Um, Podcasting. What sorts of things do you do with podcasting? Yes, let's talk a little bit about Podcastify Me, and we'll talk about exactly zero here in a minute. But I really want to kind of dig into your role with Podcastify Me and how you help people with podcasting. I know what podcasting has done for me. I
Yeah.
love to hear it from other people because um, I think people just roll their eyes when I talk anymore. So it's always good to get affirmation.
It's like, hey man, I can talk with another podcaster. Yeah, I want to have you on my show. Give me some give me some positive reinforcement, some cognitive bias. No. Um, so what we do with podcasting is we actually have figured out a way to turn the podcast into a lead generation machine. And this kind of goes back to a little bit about what I said before about networking and what I've learned over the years about podcasting. Like there are a ton of people out there that if you ask them, "Hey, could I have 5 minutes of your time to talk to you about, this product that I've got?" And they'll say, "No, I'm not interested. Now's not the time." But if you say, "Hey, could I have 30 minutes of your time? Would you like to come be a guest on my podcast? We're talking about XYZ. We're talking about this product. We're talking about challenges that you might face." in your business, you might come away with some really actionable advice. Well, heck yes. Most people will say yes to that. And it's amazing. Like I've had more people say yes to be on a podcast, which amounts to basically a cold call because I don't know these people
All right.
and they won't take my time. They won't set up time on a calendar to discuss something because they feel like they're being sold to. And so what I did with Podcastify Me was to distill it down and say, okay, we got the tactics figured out. I mean, we can wrap a podcast around anybody. We can wrap a podcast around any kind of person who wants one. We know how to systematically get like 30-second teasers out of each episode and share that on social media. We know how to drive listenership. We know how to find guests. Now, who are we going to do this for? And there was a two-part to that answer. So the first was, who do I have a lot of in my network? And who would benefit the most because they've got the natural skill for this? And the answer to both was coaches. So life coaches, business, sales, marketing, nutrition, men's health, women's health, anybody who's paid for their advice. I got coaches out the wazoo in my network. I don't know what happened, but I've just found myself crossing paths with a lot of people like this who have this massive, massive, deep, powerful spark to want to impact the lives of others via the spoken word. They are very influential. They're extremely good conversationalists, and they know how to get at the root cause of a problem in a very short amount of time. And so I tested the market. I started asking some coaches about this. And at first, it was like, well, yeah, let's do it. And that happened again and again and again. And I thought, okay, there might be something to this. Because I mean, at first I was just going out there and I'm like, yeah, we do podcasting and we do a lot of automated what. And it seemed like coaches were gravitating toward it. So I'm like, what is going on here? Why? And so that was, I looked back and I said, well, I have had a lot of people come in contact with me who happen to be coaches and they are good at conversation. I love talking with them. Even if I'm not being coached, I enjoy talking with them. They're good at what they do. So I built the company from the ground up, catering to coaches. And that focus is working amazingly well. Now, I mean, I take a page out of the book of the last company that I shut down. I was trying to be all things to all people. But now with that focus, I've got people coming that aren't coaches. They're like, well, I'm actually a non-for-profit. Can you do it for me? And I'm like, yeah, don't tell anybody, but yes, I do
Sure.
it for you. But yeah, it's amazing how much people will come be on a show with a coach and say, I do have this problem. I do feel like I don't know how to do sales properly. I don't know how to hire somebody. I don't know how to come up with a budget plan for my department. But there's a coach I can talk to and come away with some actionable advice. Let's do it. They'll say yes almost 100% of the time. It's nuts. It's almost
Yeah.
magical.
Yeah. Well, and it's not just being on the podcast that the coaches put together, but all of a sudden the coach has developed a relationship with that person.
Mm-hmm.
So when that person decides, you know what, I actually do need to hire somebody, they're not going to the yellow pages, metaphorically,
Right.
to find another coach. They already know one,
Yeah,
right?
they do. That
Well, here's a
person's top of
question.
mind too.
Somebody comes to you and says, Fritz, I don't want a podcast. Too much work, right? We can debate that. Too much work. Don't want to do that. I just want to be on podcasts. What's your response to them?
Well, my response is there's a lot of places you can go to do that. Now, guest booking services, that's not something that we do, but we are growing a list of shows. Some of them are shows that we support, they're clients of ours. Some of them aren't. Some of them are people that we've just known over the years that have awesome shows. Go check it out and see if there's one in the list that you would like to guest on. More often than not, people have like a small application form or something you got to fill out just to make sure you're legit and that you actually would provide value for the show. But yeah, there's tons and tons of shows out there. There's Facebook groups
Yeah.
out the wazoo, man. You can find, there's got to be at least 20 Facebook groups, and there are thousands and thousands and thousands of shows out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, because I had this conversation with somebody who was referred to me. They wanted to pick my brain, and Now, how do you get on podcasts? Well, why do you want to be on podcasts? Well, I want to get on podcasts to kind of get my brand out there, and maybe get hired. And in fact, I'm gonna send her your information, because I told her, I said, can I give you a suggestion? She said, sure. Ever thought about just doing a podcast instead of trying to be a guest on people's shows? Because you can beat yourself up trying to get on people's shows, and that can be a good experience, but you don't know who may or may not hear that show.
Right.
So it's almost like another layer to try and, I'm going to hire a sales guy to help me hire other salespeople who are going to help me close the deal. At some point you get so far removed, it's just, you're kind of kidding yourself, and you're not really talking to anybody. That
Right.
was my assessment. She was
That's a good
intrigued by that.
assessment.
Yeah, she was
Yeah, I
intrigued.
mean, well, it's kind of like building a networking group, like building a LinkedIn local. It's like
Yeah,
you have a little bit of control over who comes to the group. Like if you make it have a certain flavor, it's going to attract that kind of person. And so I would say to her, same thing. It's like play off that same card. Like you mentioned, you wanted to get hired. Like what kinds of people would hire you? Ask the question that, and then what is it that would attract them to want to come be a guest on your podcast, and then
that's
build a
it.
podcast around that. Yeah. So
Yeah. So you said it earlier. You call them up and say, I need 5 minutes of your time to tell me so I can tell you about my widget or my
mhm,
service. And you know what's going to happen?
they're
Um,
going to say no.
yeah, right. Well, you're not even going to get that. You're going to get the gatekeeper say, okay, I'll give the message. Right.
Yep. Yep. And then it never
Um,
happens.
it
Well,
never
just
happens.
take the message and just it goes right in the round file.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, whereas if you call and say, hey, I would like to interview person X, Mr. X, Mrs. X, Miss X, that message is getting through, right?
Hmm.
Their ego cannot get out of the way. Because as a
Yeah.
gatekeeper, it's like, oh, I don't want to be the one who doesn't get this message through. Um, Pretty awesome.
Yep.
Let's shift gears. Tell me a little bit about Exactly Zero, and I will put in the show notes podcastify me, so people can get connected with you through that. Tell me about Exactly Zero and this business that you and your wife have.
Sure thing. So that journey actually got started. We didn't know it was going to happen, but back in 2012, so a little more than 10 years ago, July 2012, I got diagnosed with cancer. And it
Mm,
wasn't a super, I mean, all cancer sucks, all cancer's bad. But of the kinds I could have gotten, it probably was the best one because it had a near 100% cure rate.
mm,
And I didn't have to have any chemo, I didn't have to have any radiation. And what we what we realized as we came out of that was we didn't look at it and say, wow, glad that's over with. We said, now there's a reason why this happened.
mm-hmm.
More than just like a spiritual mental test or whatever. It's like there's a physical reason why cancer happens. And we found that a lot of the products that we had been using unknowingly, they contain lots of things that are known to cause cancer, are known to cause inflammation, irritation. And so Charlotte actually took it upon herself. It's my wife. She took it upon herself to figure out how to reverse engineer all of the products that we use on a day-to-day basis. And the hardest thing to make is deodorant. And that's what she started with. It's like we're going to start with the armpits because that's a real sensitive area. We're going to figure this out. And I think it took her 20 or 30 tries.
Wow.
She finally got it. She finally got it. And it was amazing because when we started, like we'd have a batch of stuff and we're like, okay, we got to put it in a tube. So
Right.
I took a tube of like the off the shelf, high heat resistant stuff. And we were like, I cut the rest of it out because it was almost done. And I'm running it under the hot water, the tap. Okay. The hottest possible water. Like nobody in the house is going to take a shower at this temperature, that hottest water. And it still did not come out. It
Hmm.
was still stuck in there. You get it on your fingers. You try to wash it off with like Dawn dish soap. It's not coming off. And it's like, how clean are we actually getting our pits? Like what? There's no way. We're just putting layers and layers of crap on our bodies. And I mean, that's what made believers out of us. And so fast forward, we ended up having like multiple people saying, you need to start a business. Like, we didn't know that you were making sunscreen. We didn't know you knew how to make lip balm and deodorant and soap and stuff like that. This is really good stuff. You ought to sell it. And so in um, like February or March of 2021, we kicked it off. We have an Etsy shop. And we started that Etsy shop with like 3 kinds of lip balm and 3 kinds of soap. And now, it's September 2022. We've actually shut Etsy down because it's too small for what we're doing. We can't
Right.
do fundraising. We can't do affiliate marketing. We can't do bundles, subscriptions. We just can't, right? So so now we're at a point where we've like got the entire family room closet is full of exactly zero products. That's like she's annexed the entire thing. She's like, it's just mine. You can't have it. And it's actually starting to encroach on the rest of the house. Um, but we've got more than 60 products that we make on a day-to-day basis. We go to markets, we go to fundraisers, we go to galas. We've got a wedding expo coming up pretty soon. Um, it's just great. I mean, we're able to bless the world with what we've learned about making this sort of stuff and make an impact on the people around us. Took us a while to figure out how to make this stuff, but now that we know how and we can do it reliably and repeatably, we're going to pass it on. So it's fun, and she's a good business partner too.
Good. Well, that's good. And you got somebody who knows about marketing and how to get the word out.
Yeah, that's me. That's my
you.
job.
Yeah.
I'm the face. She's like, I don't like social media. I'll let you do it. I'm like, great, because it's fun for me.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, I really appreciate your time today. I'm glad Ruben has connected us, and he's out of the picture now. It's just us.
Just us. Just the two of us. Yeah, that guy.
Yeah.
Well, he's a good guy. He's introduced me to a bunch of.
Yeah, he is good. I like his service. So, well, I do appreciate your time today.
Anytime, man.
Thanks for joining us on the Networking RX podcast. Please put what you've learned into action today and let us know if you have questions, comments, or ideas for future topics. You can email them to us at podcast@amspirit.com. That's AmSpirit.com. Finally, so you never miss an episode, be sure to subscribe to the Networking RX podcast through iTunes, Overcast, or however you receive your podcasts. Now get out and network with someone.
The Networking RX podcast is the copyright production of AmSpirit Business Connection. All rights reserved.